And we are back. I told y'all that weekly Bash Mania was going to become a thing. And sometimes in the summer, as Gene knows, it can be hard because you want relevant topics, you want relevant guests. And in the summer, there's not a heck of a lot going on. Willie and I are going to do an Olympics preview show here soon. But Gene Zannetti is on today, and he's one of the owners and founders of Wrestling Mindset. And my marketing agency, Basch Solutions, has been doing work with Wrestling Mindset. And a conversation organically started a couple weeks ago where we were talking strategy and, we were talking Olympics and how some Olympians don't want to do interviews and they don't want to do media. And we started talking because my background is heavy marketing, Gene's is heavy mindset, and sometimes just focusing on the goal is the right thing to do. So we wanted to talk about it. Said let's do a whole little show on it. This is definitely going to be a little bit of a different show where the goal of this podcast is always to bring value and entertainment, as is the goal of your podcast. And so this is going to be mindset and marketing for wrestlers. And I'd say even if you're not a wrestler, my goal here would be to have a little peek behind the scenes, because there's always people asking questions about marketing and NIL and all these things. And I think not only do a lot of what Gene and his company do applies to mindset on and off the mat, but on top of that, we're also going to talk at some point in this conversation about how Gene's company, Wrestling Mindset, also works with a lot of athletes. They sponsor Vito Arujau, Yanni Diakomahalis, John Poznanski, Shane Van Ness, Bo Bartlett. So we're going to get into it all. Gene, why don't you give a little background on you for people who may not be, either they don't know who you are or maybe they watch every Mindset Blast. Give a little background on who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin. You've been doing great work with our website and just overall marketing consulting. And my brother Jeff and I, the owners of Wrestling Mindset, we have a saying, whenever we don't know what to do, we say, don't be rash. First ask Bash.
I got to put that on a t-shirt. I love that.
That's right. Rather than think, when you think you have all the answers, it means you need to change your questions. But we certainly respect you and all that you've done. So me, my brother Jeff, we wrestled and our brother Greg, we all wrestled from elementary school right through college. We were nationally ranked, all Ivy League wrestlers at the University of Pennsylvania. I was at Rutgers for 3 years before Penn. I have my master's degree in exercise science and sports psychology. I got my master's degree at Springfield College while I was helping volunteer assistant coach for the team. I got my second master's degree at Montclair State in clinical psychology, became a school psychologist, and Jeff and I started Wrestling Mindset to help wrestlers, basically just like how we were, who want to bring out our very best, but a lot of times we hold ourselves back. So it's overcoming our mental blocks as well as maximizing our potential, taking what does work and make it even better. So I've been blessed to be doing Wrestling Mindset since 2008. We formalized the company in 2012, and thanks be to God, it's been a big hit in the wrestling world. So we're just real excited that we've been able to help so many people.
Yeah, it's so cool. And, it's funny because I started my company in 2008. And when I started really following wrestling was after Kale and Varner and Burroughs were all clients. They were all Olympic champs. And this was, by 2012 now. And that's when I really started to get into the sport, started following the sport more and more. And right out of the gate from early on, I remember seeing you guys. I think you guys have been out there. And one thing that we've been doing in Basch Solutions is trying to help you, hone in on your service offering, because there is so many different things out there, especially nowadays where you have meme accounts and you have news accounts and you have all these accounts. And it's like, what's the difference between Wrestling Mindset and Wrestler's Grind or Obsessed Wrestler? And so you guys have definitely built such a cool brand. What went into starting it? First of all, hilarious that you were in the transfer portal before there was a transfer portal, going from Rutgers to Penn. I take it back then you didn't do it for NIL. But so what went into deciding that not only you wanted to do this, but that you could grow it into something? One of the things that I love about what you did is a lot of times you often see people who are scared to do something in wrestling because they weren't an NCAA champion or an Olympic champion or whatever this pinnacle in their head was. They didn't reach that, and that didn't stop you. You're like, I have a lot of value to bring to wrestlers. What kind of made you take that leap and decide this is where you want to go with it?
Well, I think you and I, we have a lot in common there, that we're both very business minded, right?
Yep.
So I wanted to, even when I was back in college, my first days of Rutgers, I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. And then I'd read a book on sports psychology by chance, just in the self-help section of Borders bookstore. And I saw that sports psychology is a thing. And I said, yeah, I want to be a sports psychologist. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. One of my teammates, Chris Ressa, who's a businessman now, he was a national qualifier at Rutgers. He said, Zannetti, you got to read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, okay. I looked up to him. I respected him. And that's when I said, hey, I want to own a business in sports psychology. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but the vision got clearer and clearer, from psychologist to sports psychologist to owning a business in sports psychology. So while I was in school at Rutgers and Penn, I was also doing an informal business study and education on my own, reading books. So I always knew basically that I wanted to do this probably by the time I was in college.
At what point was it that Jeff decided he was going to do this with you?
We always, even when we were kids, we were always doing different kinds of, I don't want to say money-making schemes, but we were always doing little things. Whether we were trading baseball cards with friends as kids, whether it was, I don't know, selling creepy crawlers, if you remember that. We used back in high school, we made like an impossible spelling bee that people we charged them $1 to enter, and they win $10 if they get them all right. And we'd just like some basic questions that people would get wrong. And then we did different things in college when we were working at the wrestling camp where, we'd get the kids McDonald's and we'd charge a little surcharge for driving over there. So Jeff, we undercut the wrestling camp that year. That wasn't a very good thing, but that's a whole story in and of itself. But we always knew we wanted to work together. That's the thing. But we didn't know exactly how that would look. I had that vision for what I wanted to do. And Jeff helped make it clearer and clearer, because for me, I was thinking more general sports psychology. And Jeff said, well, hey, having more of a business economics background, he said, why don't we need to niche market this? Otherwise, we're not going to be speaking to a specific audience. So it was his idea to start off niche marketing, and eventually we could always expand. And also it was his idea to use the name Wrestling Mindset, because he told me, yeah, psychology just doesn't sound cool. Performance enhancement doesn't sound cool. Peak performance doesn't sound cool. Now, for me as a psychology student, I said, what's wrong with that? He said, yeah, but to other people, they're not going to like that. So we said, Wrestling Mindset. So he helped with that niche marketing and with that name right away. So it was 2012, to answer your question. I was doing this on my own from 2008 to about 2010, 2011. And then Jeff got tired of being a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. I was tired of being a school psychologist. We were doing, well in our jobs, but we had bigger plans. We had something greater we wanted to do. So at that point, we jumped in with 2 feet, left our jobs, stressed our parents out, and started Wrestling Mindset.
I love it. I get like goosebumps when people tell me their backgrounds or stories. Like, you take such a leap of faith. And there are so many people out there that start I just did a podcast, a friend of mine's, that should come out later this week. I'll share it out. It kind of goes into my background, but we were talking about how many people that are in business that shouldn't be, because it looks so cool nowadays. There's such a an aura about it publicly, where it's like, man, being a business owner is cool. And then you're kind of blindsided if that's your intro to it, and you're blinded by the stress, anxiety, all these other things. So it's always cool when I hear somebody, they can go back and when they started it and see how successful it's gotten. I'm curious with a company like Wrestling Mindset, where you guys are offering coaching and training, and you are trying to help wrestlers improve and get better. For you, I'm curious, it's not 100% always very similar sometimes to us. We can build a great website, but that's really just a catalyst to the better your business is, the better you do. And for you guys, it's like, how did you find early success, or how did you measure early success? Because you guys can do everything right, and maybe a wrestler doesn't win a certain goal, but that doesn't mean that you didn't do your job. How were you, especially early on, measuring if what you were doing was successful?
Really, I knew the material was very important. Well, a few things. Number one, I knew the material that I had was extremely valuable and not widely disseminated in the wrestling world. So I said, just getting this information out to the wrestling world is going to be huge. It's going to help them, like just having that knowledge and information. And two, mentorship is going to help. Like I had my first mentor when I was 13 years old. And I mean, that really went a long way, especially for me being the oldest of three boys, that I didn't have an older brother. So having someone who I could talk to, that I could look up to, that was extremely helpful for me. So I knew that would be a hit. Like you see it in different areas. Like sports psychology has benefited people in different sports. Why would it not help wrestling? Mentorship has helped me when it's come to just overall life. Why would it not help if you made it even more specific to wrestling? I could tell you this, my first client that I had, I used to sell 7 packages of sessions, and I used to do them all in person in the early days. And my first guy quit. My first wrestler, by the end, he was experiencing so much stress related to the sport. And it was his dad was putting too much pressure. And I tried to appeal to him every which way to motivate him, to help him. And by the 7th session, he came to the realization that he didn't want to wrestle anymore, and that he was going to finally have a very difficult conversation with his dad, that he was done with the sport. And I mean, this scared the heck out of him. And this was something that, it took a lot of courage for him to basically stand up to his dad and say he was done. And I remember I knew in my heart that I had done the right thing. I tried every different way to appeal to him. He was clearly done with the sport. He had a big fear about bringing this up to his dad. So I remember he quit the sport. And I remember thinking, like, I know I did the right thing, but driving home, I cried because I said, man, my first wrestler quit the sport. So that was 2008.
But it also shows you that sometimes there's a bigger purpose there, where it's like, I know from talking to you guys so much over the past year that it's not always, there's so much more to training your mindset than just state champ, NCAA champ. Such a small percent of the sport hits those goals, whether it's state champ and then NCAA champ and then world and Olympic champ. And, there's so many things. I was never a good wrestler, but the sport taught me so much. And I credit so much of the success I've had now into wrestling. I think that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. But for you guys, I got to imagine it's very similar, where it's like you're growing people. Some of the testimonials we see for Wrestling Mindset are people talking about, man, my kid dealt with this loss in a way I would have never thought. Or my kid's done with wrestling now, but the mindset, so many lessons you learn in wrestling are lessons that apply off the mat, whether it's, and you guys, other elite level wrestlers, there's a lot of commonalities with controlling what you can control, gratitude, perspective. For you guys, I'm assuming a lot of it is catered when you're working with somebody to help them not just on the mat, but set them off the mat as well.
Exactly. And that's how I knew this would be something that would really land in the wrestling world, because you're helping the kid. You're teaching them to overcome any kind of mental blocks they have. And it always applies, not just wrestling, but to school, your future career, and life, right? We always say spirit, mind, and body, right? Like even back with the ancient Greeks, they would say it. And it's true. The lessons that we give the kids, they're taking it with them for the rest of their life. And I get excited about it, because as soon as we start talking to a kid, we're helping them right away. Even before, there doesn't even have to be a sale made. They might not even be in our mindset program. We're helping them as soon as we open our mouths to them, and as soon as we open our ears to what's going on in their life, because a lot of these kids just need someone to talk to. It's such a stressful sport, and they need to talk to someone, and it helps when it's someone outside the coaches, outside the parents, so they get some distance from their current situation, so they can talk about the situation from a more zoomed back meta level. So it's huge. Like I said, and the more I like it, because I think, man, I would have benefited so much from, I had the mentorship, but if it was mentorship specifically related to sports psychology, man, that would have been helpful. So we just love giving that to kids.
It's cool too to have somebody who understands wrestling. I feel like if you were to deal with, a lot of schools now have psychologists and sports psychologists, but I got to imagine there's a big difference between talking to a general sports psychologist and somebody who very much understands wrestling. And that's where I got to imagine you guys have a huge benefit.
And that was a pivotal business decision back in about 2014. Okay, so like I would have had a business like related to wrestling or mindset or psychology, no matter what. If Jeff hadn't come on board, this would never be as big as it is, just because we both have like exact identical vision, identical work ethic, but we're two totally different temperaments and two totally different strengths. I have never once, in however many years we've been in business, Jeff and I have never said, is this a Gene job or is this a Jeff job? When a task comes in, it's very easy to tell who, and that's nothing short of a godsend, right? That was dropped in our lap. So as we started expanding, initially I ran 100% of the services. Then Jeff started, I created a curriculum that we could standardize so Jeff could start mindset coaching also, so I could get some help as we grew. And then pivotal decision back in 2014. We need more mindset coaches if we want to expand this. Who do I look for? Do we take counselors? Do I look for counselors and teach them wrestling? Or do we take wrestlers and teach them counseling? What do we do? Because intuitively you think we have a sports psychology company. I need to get counselors. And the decision was based on, I remember thinking back, if I was in middle school and high school, would I rather work with a counselor who was taught wrestling or a wrestler who was taught some basic elements of counseling? And there's no doubt about it, no brainer. I'd rather work with the wrestler. So that was our decision to hire wrestlers rather than counselors.
I love that. All right, so that's some nice background for the company and you. Let's talk a little mindset and let's talk a little marketing. You know, one of the elements of our call a couple weeks ago is we're talking about strategy, and wrestling companies in the summer definitely don't have as much content and substance. You know, in the fall, in the winter, there's no doubt that there's previews and recaps and, hey, this wrestler won. And as we were talking about that, you know, my background in marketing and helping wrestlers grow, my goal is, and we were kind of talking too about like who should be on your podcast. It's like some of these Olympians don't want to do interviews right now. And that kind of started the conversation of, it's very interesting because, you know, from a mindset standpoint, and I'll let you tell your side in a minute, there's a value to that. And on the marketing side, I'm like, man, this is your chance to tell your story. If you win at the Olympics, it only amplifies that story. If you lose, I don't want to say nobody cares, but there's a reason there's a giant lull, win or lose, after the Olympics. It's this pinnacle, and then it's all over. And, you know, people care so much more about even a tournament, who's entered the tournament. People don't care after the fact who was entered. And the Olympics, to a degree, is that. Becoming an Olympian means you are entered in the Olympics. You are now competing for a chance to win gold. And there's so much value. And, you know, I've had, I think, 5 out of the 6 that are on the men's freestyle team have been on the podcast. Probably half of the women's freestyle. I know Sarah's been on, Helen's been on. So it's like, I know these people pretty well. And some of them are like, yeah, I just don't want to do any interviews until after the Olympics. And I'm like, okay, I respect that. I'm like, I feel bad because I feel like you're leaving so much brand potential on the table. But at the end of the day, you know, and you were saying you understand it from a mindset standpoint. So I'm curious your take on it.
It's a complex topic, and when you look at it, and I think this is what we were both getting at, that it depends. Like if you're looking at it bottom up, and what I mean from bottom up is from, if you're just an athlete and you're thinking about winning gold, or if you're coming at the issue looking at it top down from more of a, hey, wrestling is not the only thing in life, and you're going to have a career after wrestling, and you have to capitalize, you have to strike while the iron's hot. So if I've always been looking at it from the wrestler's perspective, how to reach my goal, right? And goal being very narrowly defined to win.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm looking at it like that, when I've listened to different interviews in the past, and I've heard things about Dan Gable keeping his team very sheltered from the media that's going on around them. I've heard many people talk about going on social media blackouts like LeBron James during the playoffs. And a lot of athletes do this where they just tunnel vision in, so they don't get distracted. I've heard about wrestlers, and we don't have to mention any names because this is common. We've heard this from many wrestlers, where when they're focusing too much on who they're going to compete against, or getting too caught up in the Olympics, getting too caught up in the hype, they've performed worse. And then the following year, then they stop looking at the rankings. They don't get caught up in the hype, and they go on and they wind up winning or doing better. Not just winning, but performing better, performing more free because they don't have that extra weight on their back, right?
Yeah.
So from a performance perspective, my thought is even if there's a 1% chance that something can throw you in a different direction, I want to isolate all the variables I can, control every little thing I can, and just focus on winning gold. However, like you, I'm a businessman. I mean, I've said people like, "Oh, Gene, you're a wrestler." I've been done wrestling since 2007. I'm a businessman. I'm not a wrestler anymore. But you have to strike when the iron's hot, and you have to know when that is, and you have to capitalize because you're going to need to have a career one day. You want to make money. You have all the different things that we spoke about there. So there's got to be a way to balance it. And I think this is where we kind of finally arrived on, and you could talk more about it, but this is why I think it's really important to have both a marketing director and coordinator who can help navigate the waters for you, because a lot of wrestlers, they aren't naturally as savvy and thinking like business minded, like a Bo Bartlett. So being directed by someone, they're able to, if someone was directed by you, their marketing solutions, they could compartmentalize it a lot better. Okay, this is my strategy from Basch. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to execute that plan just like my wrestling strategy. Bracket that, and then focus on competing, right? So like Vito spoke about this too. You have to be able to manage the hype. You can't get out of the hype altogether. There's going to be interviews, all kinds of things going on, but you have to manage that hype. So they have you for that, and then having a mindset coach who's going to help them, okay, I want to put that to the side. I'm not putting extra pressure on myself. The questions the interviewers are saying aren't getting to me. I'm focusing on winning.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where we were with it.
Yeah, and because especially when you start talking Olympics, these are now professional athletes, and if you look at what a professional athlete does, they have to compartmentalize the different areas of their career. And I think there's so much value in what you just said, and not to just put us both over, like that just happens to be, what we do. And I think it's the truth that, a lot of these athletes, whether it's wrestlers, whether it's other athletes, they're trying to figure this out. And I think that's at times what overwhelms them, confuses them, stresses them out, because they don't know. And you have to continue to adapt. When you were in college, there was no NIL. There was no social media. The first thing my marketing brain does when you mention Dan Gable and how he tuned something out, my first instinct is, but there was no social media. But there was no this. There was no brand deals. If Dan Gable wrestled now, would he do the same thing? Maybe. Maybe he'd also, sometimes these wrestlers let a little bit of their personality out, and they actually like it. They realize that, they're in. It's not. I think not only is it not one size fits all. I don't think there's one solution for everybody. I think even, and you kind of just set the stage for this. I think even within an athlete, from year to year or event to event, I don't think it has to be the same. We've seen Jordan Burroughs do everything from my next tweet is going to be at the top of the podium to, hey guys, I'm locking in for this. I'll be back in a couple weeks. We've seen Jordan change based on where he's at in his career, what's going on, what he's dealing with. Jordan has competed while having multiple kids and getting married and all these things. And you're especially, and you would know this even better than me, because as you work with somebody younger and younger, they're going through one of the biggest changes in their life. They're graduating high school. They're going to college. They're getting girlfriends. They're boyfriends. They're getting married. They're having kids. It's so crazy how much is going on in their lives that you have to be able to not only adapt to new things, but know when it's time to change. And I think there's also, for different athletes, there's different comfort levels. I always reference Varner and Burroughs because I worked with both of them after they both won gold in 2012, and they both went on very different careers. And I think they're both very happy with where it went. But, Jake leveraged it more he lives more, I'd say, a quieter life. He kind of retired soon after, a couple years later, into coaching, and he's had like 9 kids. Jordan, I guess, has also had like 9 kids, but they wanted to do different things with their brand, and I think that's great for both of them. You have to know what makes you happy and where you're going to get joy and fulfillment, and I think that changes from person to person and throughout your career.
Absolutely, which is the benefit that you get of coaching, because when you're coached by someone, whether it be a marketing coach or mindset coach, ideally both, you're getting that perspective, and you could tailor it to the person, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure there's some principles when you're working with someone, you have those principles that have to be there, but there's so much variability within those principles. Same thing with mindset training. It's like we have these general principles that we have, but then of course you have to tweak it to that person specifically. So I think a wrestler does, like you said, you got to start with why. You got to, and a big mistake that a lot of wrestlers make is all they're thinking about while they're competing is their wrestling career, and they're not thinking about life after wrestling at all. That is definitively a mistake, and it's inexcusable, because there's enough time in the day, and the wrestling career is long enough. You have to be thinking about what you're going to do in the future. That just has to be something that's done. We're always emphasizing that as mindset coaches to our athletes. Look at the big picture, and then that goal will dictate your behavior. 100%. Right? You never do things just to do them. Your goal dictates your behavior. And this day and age, especially when you know that the marketing, it's there, and social media is much more prevalent, right? Like, yeah, Gable shielded his guys from, you can't apply just verbatim exactly what Dan Gable did and say, oh, well, that's going to work now. Exactly. Just like that. But they did have video cameras in different interviews that he kept his guys shielded from. So you could assume he probably would have kept his guys more shielded, if not entirely shielded, more so maybe than most. That's okay. It doesn't necessarily mean it's even the right answer. If you're looking to do something more with your wrestling career, you do need to capitalize on these once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So you look at the Olympics, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in 2 different directions. One, this might be your only crack at an Olympic championship ever. So you want to maximize your chances of winning. Do everything you can to win. At the same time, you might not win. And even if you knew for sure you were going to win, right? This is your one shot to capitalize and seize the day from a marketing and sales point of view for yourself that you'll never have again in your life. So I feel that tension as a business owner, and them marketing themselves. They should see dollar signs and opportunity. But that's not what necessarily got them in that position to be going for an Olympic championship. So it's a tough balance. So I really do think you got to get help to sift through these difficult waters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is with your mindset towards marketing and branding. And I think having people in your corner. I think a lot of right now our senior level athletes that have been around for a while, they look at media more as a liability or a responsibility, something a chore that they have to go and do. A lot of the up and coming wrestlers are looking at it more so, this is an opportunity. I want to do this interview and that in this interview and that, because I know there's opportunity to build my brand, and with brand comes more opportunity. The bigger your brand is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute with like what Bo Bartlett's done, for example. But I think, it's like for Gable, would he have still shielded his guys? 100%. You're right. He still could have. Or maybe he would have saw the opportunity to work with an NIL collective, exclusively give this one company all media rights, access, whatever. Maybe he would have saw the opportunity. So it's like it changes constantly. And I think the more, you have so many cool opportunities for the Olympic squad. The women's team is better than they've ever been. The men's team, you've got wrestlers going for multiple medals. You got Snyder going to his 3rd Olympics. You got Date going back, can he win gold? You got Brooks, he dethroned the greatest in the world right now, David Taylor. Can he go and beat Yazdani? It's a lot closer than people are going to think. The fact that one of the closest odds, but not a favorite, to win the Olympics is Aaron Brooks. And that would surprise a lot of people. These are all stories. Iowa has kind of needed somebody to build off of. They got Spencer Lee in the Olympics. Zane Rutherford was going to be done last year. And Cody said, I got a plan to get you down to 65 kilos. Trust me, I think we can do this. And now he's going to the Olympics. You know, Dake just lost his father, and now he's going back to try to get gold. Sidikoff, one of the biggest guys he wants revenge against, isn't there. These are all stories that I think give you opportunity to build your brand. And also, when you look at it from a standpoint of selflessly giving back to the sport, these are opportunities to encourage, inspire, and give back to people, your fans. Part of doing interviews, and there's people that don't do a lot of interviews, and when they do, Kirk Fleet does not do a lot of interviews. I just had him on. He's a man of few words. He's not somebody who's going to talk for hours, but man, the comments were so good to hear from Kirk. What a guy. Loved hearing from him. Your fans want to hear from you. That's opportunity. And I think going back to what you said about working with someone who can help shield you and say, these are the opportunities, do this interview. I think it's good for your brand. Take some clips, have somebody put it on social, and then back to tunnel vision for the Olympics. You know, I think it's as a Christian, our free will is a blessing. I don't want to say it's a curse, but it's like God will give us our free will. And sometimes I don't want that free will. You know, as Olympians, you do have that free will to do very limited media. Just do what NBC and the USA Wrestling requires you to do and go on your way. That's fine. That's your free will. That's your right. I think is a brand and marketing first guy, I just think you lose the opportunity that you may not get again. And that's where it's like, man, as long as you understand that, you know, and I've seen it where I remember back in 2016 when Frank Molinaro became an Olympian, I said, Frank, man, we should really what a cool story, what God just did in your life. Man, here you make the team, you don't qualify the weight, this guy gets caught with PEDs, now you're on the team, you're an Olympian forever. Let's tell your story. And I remember Frank was like, man, I love what you're saying. I just kind of want to focus down. And this was still 8 years ago, so there's not as much opportunity as there even is now. But still, I remember Frank, that's so cool because after the Olympics, people aren't going to care nearly as much about what just happened and what could potentially happen in a while.
And everything you're saying there is absolutely 100% right. It's coming at it from the top down, because I could turn it right on its head and say the exact same thing. I could say, listen, this is your one shot at winning an Olympic gold. This is it. If there's even a 1% chance of getting distracted, and as far as responsibility to your fans in the sport, the best thing you could do is win this whole darn tournament. Your fans are going to be happy if you win. And honestly, this is the time you have to be selfish. You can't be thinking as much about everyone else. You have to be focused on what you have to do. Focus on yourself. This is your one shot at it. However,
I know it's
there's still no excuse to put on the blinders of what will my life be like after my wrestling career is over. And to me, and I'm not just saying this, I mean it. What helps me using a marketing strategy, using Basch Solutions, for me, it gives me peace of mind, because Jeff and I, and not just me, my brother also, we're racking our brain how to help more people, how to build the company, what decisions to make. And like I said, don't be rash. Just ask Basch. You know, that helps. We're like, hey, what do you think we should do with this? How many times we're on the phone? It comes up, Justin, every day. And I'm not just saying this, where it's like, what do we do? It's like, let's ask Basch that one. And it gives us a peace of mind that it allows us to move forward with the day. And then we say, okay, we'll talk to you about it. And then after, we'll revisit that topic. It gives me and my brother peace of mind to run our business. In my opinion, this day and age, that's how a wrestler should be approaching this as well, because you do have a golden opportunity with your platform, with social media for yourself. So coming at it from the top down, which a wrestler needs to at least be looking at it somewhat from the top down, if they have a guy like you in their corner, now they could feel like, okay, I have the peace of mind. This is how I'm going to handle my social media and my marketing, bracket that, and now run hard and compete. To me, yep, you're controlling the primary concern of a wrestler who doesn't want to do all these interviews is, I don't want to get distracted. I don't want to I don't want to introduce any unknown variables into the equation.
Sure.
I think with the help, with of course the help of a mindset coach, but also with very much with the help of a marketing strategist yourself, they could compartmentalize it a lot better, control those variables, and at the same time capitalize on a once in a lifetime opportunity for yourself. So short period of time for an Olympian, you should have your mindset coach and you should have your marketing strategist, so you could be firing on both cylinders, both from the bottom up and from the top down. That's my thought.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you said that so well. I might have to clip it and put it on Basch Solutions later. But I think it's the truth. You know, even with the businesses we help, not even just wrestling specific, like people like you, that we do give a peace of mind, because we'll come in, and whether it's an opinion, whether it's just, you know, if all of a sudden we tell somebody, hey, you're going to post on social media 5 or 10 times this month, and here's a breakdown. You're going to do 2 testimonials. You're going to do 2 holiday graphics. You're going to do 2 general service, whatever it is. All of a sudden, that weight is kind of lifted. A lot of wrestlers struggle when it comes to this stuff with not only what you just said, but also, what should I post? What should I post? What should I post? The number of times I talk to wrestlers, correct. And if you're sitting there all day long thinking about what to post, or it is exhausting. And I commend these wrestlers that, you know, I remember I did a lot of work with David Taylor for a lot of years. And when he started getting really active on social, I remember him saying, like, Justin, aren't people getting sick of that, you think? And I'm like, no, because I'm like, for you, it's your daily routine and you're so used to it. Like, you're getting more and more fans as you win more and more, and people want to see behind the scenes. I'm like, don't overthink it. Just document what you're doing and don't, you know, think too hard. And I feel like that helps lift the burden of, now there's another distraction removed when you don't have to figure out all day, what should I post? What should I post? So I think there's so much value in that. And 2, you know, while we're sitting here talking about ourselves and each other, because it's what we truly believe in, here's a great practical use case. We were talking about wrestlers that Wrestling Mindset should sponsor and sign with for this upcoming season. And typically what you see is one of 2 things, typically, with NIL deals. Real ones. I'm not talking about the shady stuff. I'm talking real NIL deals. You typically see 2 things. 1, you see wrestlers getting deals because they're from their hometown. Okay, Yanni's from Rochester. Let's give him a deal. Okay, Nick Lee is from, forgot the name of the town in Indiana. Okay, let's do a car dealership commercial with Nick Lee. Great. Another case you typically see is an NCAA World or Olympic champion wins and they get a deal. That doesn't always mean those are the right 2 deals. If you want to give yourself, if I want to give back to somebody in Rochester because they're from Rochester, great. But just because somebody won doesn't mean they align with you, doesn't mean they want to work for you. And when we were talking about different potential athletes wrestling mindset, I don't even think, honestly, we mentioned a single champion. I'll have to go back and think about it. But a lot of it's like, where can you find value? Where can you find value? And I remember the first guy that popped into my head that I'm like, you guys should work with is Bo Bartlett. And I'm like, he's a guy who hasn't won an NCAA championship, but he made it to the NCAA finals. But more importantly, he is off the mat with his brand, the hardest working kid, or one of them, in college wrestling. And what that shows me as somebody who's, you know, saying, hey, I really like Bo. He's a friend of mine, so I think he's a great guy to work with regardless. But from a business standpoint, if you look at how hard he's working,
right?
One of the things you said was like, and this is a lot of coaches' mentality, go and win, and the brand deals will be there. It's not so much the case anymore, because you have people that Bo Bartlett puts out content every single day. He loves what he does. He's a great partner. When he did a video for you guys making the announcement, it was authentic. It was real. It was in your merch. It was authentic. That's who companies want to work with. And I think what Bo has done a great job of is leveraging being on the greatest college dynasty in sports, being a guy who is leveraging opportunity of being in the spotlight, and he's working very hard to capitalize on that. And I think Bo has set himself up very good where, and I don't necessarily think this specifically was his mindset last year, but in hindsight, you could say he had the vision, win an NCAA title or lose an NCAA title. I want brands to see me as a valuable asset. And now he's gotten multiple deals. He's got a deal with you guys. He's doing deals with companies like 7-Eleven and Crocs and all this because of his work ethic and because of his opportunity. If Bo would have just sat back and said, well, when I win, there'll be opportunities for me. That's not always the case anymore. And if you just want to go win your NCAA championship or 3 or 4 of them, that's fine. But, and I know, I can't believe it was already 2016, but go look at a guy like Alex Derringer, trying to think of older guys. He won 3 NCAA championships. I don't see a lot of the Derringer brand. I think he's very happy and he's doing what he's doing, and that's fine. But there's a big difference nowadays when you're building an opportunity for yourself. And that's where I feel like, and you said looking from the top down, like you do have a career after this. And, you know, as a man, I always think like I want to be the best provider for my family as possible. So if you're thinking about opportunity, man, that's where it's like, I'm not looking at it like you are from the mindset standpoint. I'm looking at it from a man, you know, and I think being a businessman, having a business for 16 years, you learn to look under every rock for opportunity. And when you see that from the outside view, like, man, you got an opportunity there. You got an opportunity there. Take it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm thinking about it. I am coming at it from both of those lenses because I know what it's like trying to chase down a state championship and looking to win a national championship. And myself and my brothers just seeing that. It's like, hey, you want to do everything you can to reach that goal. But at the same time, I mean, that's the mission statement of Wrestling Mindset is really, you know, using wrestling as a vehicle to build better people, right? Using wrestling as a vehicle. So, you know, you're trying to set yourself up for wrestling should help make you set yourself up to have a better life, right?
Yeah.
How do I use the sport of wrestling to open up doors and opportunities for me? Well, when you're in college, we tell our kids all the time that we're working with, you're in college, you have access to alumni, you can network with all kinds of people that you won't be able, it'll be harder for you to put yourself back in touch with those people after you're gone from the school. So you need to strike while the iron's hot. I think that's really what we're talking about here. When there's these big events and you're in it, you have a golden opportunity that you won't be able to, like, yeah, maybe if you do well, a door will still be open. The door might still be open, but in one sense, the iron won't be as hot, and maybe the door won't be open. You can't guarantee that door will always be open. So you need to be thinking about that in your wrestling career. How do I use wrestling to set myself up to build a better future? And that's what I think wrestlers do need. You need a marketing coach. For the same reason why a business like Wrestling Mindset needs a marketing coach. It gives you peace of mind and some direction. I mean, us building Wrestling Mindset, that doesn't, you're not an expert all of a sudden in every single area across the board, far from it. So it gives us peace of mind, and we know, hey, we got you, and you're able to tell us, hey, maybe more of this, maybe less of that, and then we could build other aspects of our business. A wrestler needs that too. And remember this too, Bo Bartlett is the type that he likes the spotlight, he likes to communicate. I think about someone like my brother Greg, Father Greg Zannetti, the priest now. Well, he was ranked 6th in the country at Rutgers. He beat 2 NCAA finalists. When he was in Rome studying for his doctorate, the Italian Olympic coach wanted him to be on Team Italy. No, not going for his doctorate. When he was going for his to be at seminary. Did I pause here?
You're back. Just keep going. We'll cut that out.
Or
we'll leave it. We'll show the behind the scenes.
I would say my brother, Father Greg, when he was in the seminary in Italy, he was training with Abraham Cagnetto. The Olympic coach wanted him to go for Team Italy while he was studying to be a priest. My point is this: he had no desire to have any kind of media on him at all. Right? Yeah. He wouldn't want anyone to be following him during his wrestling career. He was a very private person. However, you do, unless you know you're going to be a priest, which you didn't know back in college, you still have an opportunity to let wrestling help set yourself up for the future. And maybe you don't want to be a wrestling coach, or whatever it might be, but you have an opportunity to get your name out there. And what we see as businessmen is that is pure gold. That could help you get a job. Even if you don't want to be a business owner, you're going to need a job in the future. Well, now your name got out there for people who could possibly employ you. You have future partners, future connections. So you do need to capitalize on that. And I think that's huge value of having a marketing coach. I'm saying the same things over and over.
Hey, I love it. As a guy who's in marketing, I also think too, you bring up the fact of people. And by the way, if you don't want a mindset coach or a marketing coach, at least put some thought into those areas of your career. We're not here just telling you only need to work with us. We're a resource for those who want it, but you can, if you even try to focus more on the mindset and the marketing aspects of your business, there's a lot of value there. And going back to what you just said about somebody maybe finding you and saying, hey, you know what? I loved what you said about this or that. I've had wrestlers on here who start talking about their faith, and all of a sudden maybe somebody wants to bring them in because like, hey, I didn't really know you were a Christian. I didn't really hear you talk too much about your faith. Now I like that. You give yourself more opportunities. I also think you talk job interviews. One thing that I think I read somewhere, it could have been Twitter, but that Ben Askren always encourages his kids to do podcasts and interviews because it's like, shake the rust off, develop yourself. Yes. All of a sudden you're going to go win NCAAs. You're going to go win the Olympics. You're going to have a microphone in front of you on some of the biggest media companies in the world, and you're not going to know what to say, or you're going to say something silly or dumb. So it's like, I know for me, I don't always love doing podcast as a guest. I like being a host, but I say yes to a lot of them because I think it's good. It's good to be uncomfortable. It's good to have somebody ask you questions. I'm 16 years into business. I'm 240 episodes into this podcast, 241 now. And even last week when I did my buddy's podcast, a little nervous. Somebody asks you questions. There's always a little bit of that. I think that's healthy. So I think it's like, man, if you have the opportunity to, and I want to give specific examples, but I'm trying not to mention certain wrestlers because I don't want fans upset that certain wrestlers don't want to do interviews. And I respect them. Like, I respect your position as far as what you're saying. I totally get why some of them don't want to do interviews. I just wish they'd look at it more holistically and see those opportunities. And to give a little value to the wrestlers that are still listening, because at this point, if you're a wrestler and you're still listening to this 45 some minutes in, here's some concrete value for you. Gene, if somebody next summer, we're evaluating wrestlers for Wrestling Mindset to work with, and it's not just the NCAA champions you're looking for, what is it that you, as somebody who's giving NIL deal to wrestlers to work with them, what are you looking for wrestlers who are maybe listening thinking, I wish I had more opportunities or deals, whatever?
Carrying themselves well. I think that's a big thing. You want to carry yourself well. You actually want to live the code, basically. Be a person of high quality, because why would you want someone? I wouldn't want someone representing my brand who's not a high caliber person. Mm-hmm. And that goes with, everything. The way you carry yourself after a win, after a loss, how you carry yourself on your social media is huge, because ultimately what we're looking for in those partnerships where we promote one another, right? They're a face of our brand. They're one of our people that we feel will showcase who we are and what we're about. They represent what we're about. So they carry themselves well with all that, but we'd also want to see that they are capitalizing on social media. They're posting, they're getting their name out there, because then I could feel comfortable. Hey, if we're going to be paying someone to represent us, and I'd want to see that they are actually posting on social media. So I know, okay, this person is going to increase the visibility of my company, right? So they would need to be a little bit savvy with social media posting.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception that NIL stands for name, image, likeness. And one of its intent is an athlete can get paid for somebody to use their name, image, and likeness. That doesn't mean there's always an insane amount of value to just say somebody's name. You have to earn and build that value, and part of that is wrestlers being able to, especially wrestling, where it's like companies aren't going to get that many deals by just saying, hey, so-and-so, whatever. But if you can work together, and where I feel like NIL really brings value to wrestlers is it allows them to work with you. It's not just, hey, let us post a picture of you. It's worth X amount of money. There are those deals, and typically it's bigger companies that you see do that. But a lot of what it actually is allowing wrestlers to work with people like you, who can now, you guys can work hand in hand, create content together. You both get good, valuable content. It's not so much just, hey, you won, let me pay to use your name. It's also, hey, this allows you to get paid off your name, image, and likeness, which means we can use you in content. We can work together. So I think the wrestlers that want to, and I always encourage wrestlers to just post about different brands and share stuff and give people an idea. It's literally one of the building blocks of signing Bo Bartlett. You see what he can do with other sponsors. And even if it's not a sponsor, if you love Peloton and you're posting content with your bike, even if you're not sponsored by Peloton, it shows a different brand. Wow, I love how enthusiastic they are about this product. I wonder if they would be enthusiastic about my product, because if they were, man, I would love to work with them. Doesn't mean everybody's going to be a good fit, and you don't have to take a deal just because it's a deal. But, another athlete you're working with this year is Shane Van Ness. Why? He actually did the program. You guys worked with Shane Van Ness when he was younger, and now you don't have to wait until post-college to say, hey, man, we'd love to pay you now after you paid us to tell people how your experience was. And we know you have a platform, and we know you have a brand. We'd love to pay you and get the message out. It's still authentic. They're just being compensated for it.
Exactly. Those would be a few other good points right there when you say, what are we looking for? They believe in the importance of mindset training. The fact that Shane, we actually worked with Shane for some time when he was in high school. He believes in the importance of mindset training. Also, we want people who are looking to actually that are more mentor type people. You look like John Posnanski. He's another guy who's embraced kids. Shane Van Ness said he always wanted to be involved in coaching. Said he loves being able to give back to the kids. So what I know when I'm looking at these guys, Vito was just at these wrestling camps. He's doing a tour last week through this week. And when these guys are working with the kids, they talk about the importance of mindset. I'm looking for people who are going to be, when they want to be out in front of kids, in front of parents, in front of wrestling clubs and coaches, talking about not only the importance of their technique, but the importance of mindset, right? If they believe in mindset training, and they're out in front of a lot of people, that's big for us. Like if someone didn't really want to go to camps, go to clubs, and share themselves, that really wouldn't be exactly someone who we're looking for. Right. And then the one other point I would say is if someone was interested in an NIL deal, let us know. I mean, we always talk about being aggressive in the sport of wrestling. Well, when it comes to your career, you need to be tactfully tenacious, which it doesn't mean being a jerk or overstepping the line or being annoying, but it does mean letting the person know, hey, I would love to one day I would love to be considered by you for an NIL deal, because then we know, oh, wow, this is a person who would be interested in representing our brand. And exactly like you said there, Justin, you want that synergy where we're helping each other.
Yeah. And I also think, too, you bring up Paz, and he's another great example of leverage your local relationships. You guys are in Jersey. You guys have the Rutgers connection. Paz is a Rutgers kid. And because of those things you mentioned, he was able to get a deal with you guys where even though he has all those traits, if he was at Illinois and you just don't happen to go out there and meet him, you might not have that deal. So I think for local wrestlers, leverage your network. And like you said, a few minutes ago, you have all these connections in college, and I never went to college. I wish I could go back just from a business standpoint. All these things, like, man, the doors you can have opened if you're,
Right.
there's a lot of events you get to go to, and some, if your mindset is you have to go to them, that's kind of the wrong mindset, because, man, I know now, I don't care what kind of event it is, there's a little bit of me that's always thinking, even if it's church on Sunday morning, I'm always thinking about the brand. There's a little bit of me, a little bit in me that's
we're
like,
businessmen. Because we're businessmen.
who are you going to meet? Who, like, carry yourself well, because, man, I've been surprised where the reason I kind of think about that now, aside from what I said about looking for opportunity under every rock, I've also met people very casually early in my career that later are like, wait, you do what? Oh, can you help me? Or, hey, I work for this company. Can you help us? I'm going to give the owner your name. So I think looking at things like events that you have to do, look at them more as opportunity. You don't know who you're going to meet, who you can create content with, all those different things. And I think, Paz getting a deal with you guys is a great example of that. Again, he's not an NCAA champion. He's a great kid. He works very hard, and he's proven to you guys that he's somebody you want to align with.
Yeah. And he's an All-American. He does a lot. He does a lot of winning too, John Paz. So it's that good fit. It clearly works both ways. And the same thing with the other guys that we're partners with. But that's why I do think these guys need to realize, and it's hard for a kid when they're young and they're not looking at that big picture, but they need to be looking at that big picture. They have to be coming at it from the bottom up and from the top down. And what you don't want to do is finish your wrestling, which so many wrestlers do. They finish their wrestling career, and then they say, now what? And they can't go back. And that's the thing that hurts. They had a golden opportunity to set themselves up. Now, if you have no choice and you have to work backwards, fine. You could still do very well. Mm-hmm. But why not use wrestling to the maximum? Like, you're giving your heart and soul to wrestling. So why not use wrestling to the maximum to open doors for you for the future? We understand that when it comes to work hard in wrestling, middle school, high school, so it could open doors for you for college. But you have to also be looking at it for your career. And the career doesn't just mean the college you're getting into. It means exposure and networking. And we can't emphasize that enough, the exposure and the networking. And that's what social media provides, that in no other time period in history can you capitalize the way you can capitalize right now, but you got to know what you're doing. And if you're a great wrestler, most people, you can't do it all. So having that marketing coach is going to be extremely helpful. So you have to capitalize on the research, on the resources that you have available to you. And that's what's great about what you guys do.
And I think too, you don't know what you know until you know, or you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And I feel like a lot of kids, they get, for me, I just said this again on the interview I did last week, where it's like, I had no financial literacy till after high school. None. I knew nothing about credit. I knew nothing about finances. And then all of a sudden you're going back and you're trying to learn it. And it's like, there's a time and a place, I get it, for just being a kid and just having fun and just competing. But there's also the opportunity, like we're talking about, that you do have the chance, especially in this day and age of NIL and social media and brand deals, to leverage these things for good. And by the way, one last thing I'll say too is, and I've said this before, but it's relevant, there is a big difference between creating content and consuming content. And a lot of wrestlers get hung up on the consuming part, because you can use Meta Business Suite, schedule a post out, you can do different things without having to scroll your feed for a half hour and get feedback and look at rankings and hear who Bash in the Brain picked to win a tournament. Like, you don't have to do those things. There's aspects depending on your level of where you're at. And I think somebody like you is a great person for these kids to work with, when it's like, listen, I struggle with this because of this. Why do you struggle with that? Get to the bottom of it. Now, if you can get rid of some of these mental roadblocks and set yourself up better for success later, great. Forget the titles for a minute. There is a huge victory.
Right. and they need to be thinking about it. They need to be coming at this. That's, I maybe that's the take home, that they need to be looking at this from the bottom up and the top down, because you have a golden opportunity. And I think the wrestlers are, to a certain extent anyway. And I do think the parents are looking at it like that to a certain extent anyway. They just might not be grasping the impact or the opportunity that social media provides for opening doors in maybe a non-conventional way of setting yourself up for the future, because parents didn't grow up in that kind of a generation. So their concept of the networking and capitalizing on resources is different than what's going on right now. Like they say, the game has changed, and you need to change with, you need to, yes, embrace all those things that will help set you up for the future in your parents' generation, but you have to also do what's available in our generation. And there's no question that's marketing and social media. And you need to know how to navigate these murky waters, and who you're going to call.
Yeah, Bash. and it's only going to continue to change. I know early in my career, I started the company in 2008. In March of 2009 is when I reached out to Cal Sanderson. And I reached out to him via email. And I said, I love the opportunity to help you build your brand. And we ended up working together. And long story short, in 2011, I reached out to Jordan Burroughs on Twitter. I DM'd him and said, you're going to be a star. I would love to work with you. I already work with Cal. I work with Varner. I really think that we could do something. And we got connected. We started working together. We became good friends. We've been at each other's weddings. We still do business to this day because of a DM I sent 13 years ago. And his whole family was over. His kids were in the pool. I remember thinking, I'm like, it's kind of crazy. This all started from a DM. Like, it's just capitalizing opportunity. And even from 2008 to 2011, it went from an email to a Twitter DM. In 2025 and 2028, it's going to look different. And I think the more you trust other people to figure it out for you, for the last 16 years of Basch Solutions, we've been figuring things out so our clients don't have to. And I think the more you trust people in that realm, I think the more it's going to continue to give you peace as well, not having to think about yourself.
That's what I think.
I'm not trying to plug myself. It's just, it's relevant because it's there's a lot of questions out there about it.
And I'm trying to come at it from, I'm really trying to come at it from I'm putting myself back when I was competing, and when I'm advising a kid who is trying to win. They're trying to be successful in their wrestling career. So I'm trying to say, okay, yes, you want to do that, and here's how you can do that with minimizing the distractions from social media.
Yeah.
While that are potential distractions from social media, while maximizing the fruitfulness of what this could do for you, not only now, but after your wrestling career is over. And I think that is at the heart of what I'm supposed to do as a mindset coach, staying true to our company values of using wrestling to open doors for you, as well as use wrestling as a vehicle to make you a better person. I think that's the responsible way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, Gene, this has been a fun hour. For people who want more on mindset, where can they go?
WrestlingMindset.com, and check us out on all of our social media platforms. We have a great YouTube page, our Facebook, our Instagram, you name it, we got it.
If you want golden nuggets, little mindset things here and there, go follow them on Instagram. Let's get them to 100,000. They're at like 96, 97,000. There's so much content, almost 98 now. So much content, and it's going to be such a fun season with Bo and Paz and Shane and everything else coming up. So, all right, Gene, this was fun. I really hope everybody listening had as much fun as we did.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dustin.
All right, we'll talk soon. See ya.
And the beat goes on.